The castle bells had only just begun to ring in the early dawn, their chimes drifting over green hills and sleepy villages, when a young prince stood on the palace balcony, gazing out at the horizon. The air was crisp, the grass still jeweled with dew, and the scent of blooming roses floated in from the royal gardens. But though the morning was beautiful, his heart felt heavy. In his hand was a letter, the ink still fresh. It was a summons from his father, the aging king, calling him home from his travels. "Return at once," it read. "I am ill, and I wish to see you wed before I die." The prince had been away in a distant land, where he had met and fallen in love with a young princess, not just for her beauty, though her eyes sparkled like sunlight on water, but for her kindness, her wit, and the way she seemed to see the world in colors no one else noticed. They had promised each other their hearts, but the letter had brought an end to those dreams. When he returned home, the king's wishes were clear. He was to marry a neighboring princess for the sake of peace between their kingdoms. The prince, bound by duty, agreed, though every word felt like a stone sinking in his chest. Far away in her own castle, the young princess he had left behind received the news from a passing merchant. Her heart trembled, but she did not weep for long. Instead, she paced her chamber, her mind turning like the wheels of a great clock. If this was the end, she wanted to see him one last time, to understand why. But she would not go as herself. She would go in disguise. She called for her most loyal ladies-in-waiting. "If you love me," she told them, "help me in this." They nodded without hesitation, for they knew her heart was true. By the next sunrise, 12 women dressed not as princesses or noble ladies, but as huntsmen, rode out from the castle gates. They wore fine boots, cloaks of green, and wide belts at their waists. Each carried a bow and quiver, and their faces, though fair, were shaded under hunting caps. At their head rode the princess, her golden hair hidden, her voice low and steady as she led them toward the prince's kingdom. Days later, they arrived at the gates of his palace. The princess, in her disguise, bowed before the king and said, "We are 12 huntsmen, skilled in the forest and field. Might we serve in your court?" The old king, pleased at the thought of such fine protectors, agreed. Soon the 12 huntsmen were given quarters in the castle, free to roam its halls and gardens. The princess saw him often, the prince she loved, but he never seemed to recognize her beneath her hunter's clothes and lowered cap. Yet the king's mind was sharp despite his age. Something in the leader of the huntsmen caught his attention. "My son," he said one evening, "I suspect your chief huntsman is no man. We shall see." The king ordered a test. He had the royal hall's floor scattered with peas, hundreds of them, rolling across the polished stone. "A true man will tread upon them without notice," the king explained. "A woman will step carefully to avoid crushing them." The princess, learning of the test from a kindly servant, gathered her companions. "When we walk into the hall, we must tread heavily, as though we do not see the peas." And so they did. The king's plan failed, but he was not done. The next day, he brought into the hall a great hound, known for bounding up to women but ignoring men. As the dog padded forward, the princess held her breath. When it came to her, she crouched low, patting it firmly on the head as a huntsman would. The hound wagged once and trotted away. Again, the king's suspicion faltered. Days passed, and the wedding drew near. The prince treated the huntsman kindly, yet the princess could see his spirit was not light. Sometimes she caught him staring out over the gardens with the same faraway look he had worn when they parted. Then, one golden afternoon, the air heavy with the scent of lilies, a messenger rode through the gates bearing gifts from the bride-to-be. Among them was a music box carved of pale wood. When wound, it played a tune so sweet and melancholy that it seemed to drift straight into the heart. The princess, hearing the music, felt her chest tighten, for it was the very song they had once danced to under lantern light in the gardens of her own castle. She faltered, her hand slipping to her cap as tears pricked her eyes. The prince, watching from across the hall, noticed the trembling of her shoulders, the way her head bent at the melody. Something struck him then, a memory, a feeling too familiar to ignore. He stepped closer, his voice low. "Huntsman, who are you?" The princess lifted her eyes, and in that instant, the world seemed to still. The disguise could no longer hide her, not from him. "My prince," she said softly, "I came only to see you once more before your wedding." His heart surged with recognition, joy, and regret all tangled together. "Why did you not speak sooner?" "Because you had chosen your path," she replied, though her voice trembled. "I would not stand in the way of your duty." The prince took her hands, heedless of the hall around them. "My duty is to my heart, and my heart has always been yours." By the time the king entered, the choice was already made. The wedding to the other princess was quietly set aside, and the court soon learned of the brave huntsman who had been no huntsman at all. The king, seeing the truth of their love, gave his blessing. When the bells rang again, it was for a wedding, not one of politics, but of promise. The princess walked beside her prince, her hair gleaming in the sunlight, her 12 loyal companions smiling proudly behind her. And so, the girl who had ridden into the castle disguised as a huntsman left it as a queen. She had proved that love can wear many faces, but in the end, it always reveals itself. Because sometimes, the truest courage is not in the hunt for game, but in the quiet, steady chase of the heart. Like, comment, and subscribe for more magical tales, and don't forget to press the bell icon. If you had to wear a disguise to be near someone you loved, what would you choose to be? Tell me in the comments. I'd love to hear your ideas.